Welcome to Coffee with Ryan. It is Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I know that I'm usually scheduled for 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays to do live streams, but today my schedule had some complications and I have to pick my girlfriend up, and it just is what it is. But I'll make sure to be on this time schedule from here on out. So this is going to be a quick stream today. Welcome to everyone just joining. Thank you for being here. I want to get into a thought that I had, and I'd like to hear your feedback on it. And that thought is, what is the difference between stress and struggle? And let me just define these two things for you as I see them real quick. For me, stress is being in resistance to what's happening based on fear, based on thinking about the future, or worrying about details of how things are going to work out. So when I get stressed, it's typically me looking at what I've got coming up in my schedule, or feeling like I have too much going on and I can't balance everything. It's typically not based on what I'm doing in the present moment. For me, stress is really based on the future. Now, I know stress can be defined in different ways, right? Because there's psychological stress, and then there is physical stress, like your body's under stress. Physical stress, neurological stress, will just happen anytime you're pushing yourself. So if you're working really hard and you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, you're going to experience some levels of stress, right? That's just a reality in your endocrine system. The neurochemicals that get released, it's going to create some stress, some cortisol, etc. However, psychological stress, I define a little differently, because psychological stress is creating a problem in the mind based on the future or based on various things that are going on. So to me, struggle and stress are two different things. I can struggle and I don't have to necessarily have psychological stress within that struggle. Let me try to explain this a little bit. Let's say hey Michael, good to see you. Let's say I'm working on writing an essay for school. I know it's early, Grizz. Grizz says, this is early. Why are you on early? Yeah, I have a schedule complication. I'll tell you why real quick. Basically, my girlfriend, Victoria, said she really wanted me to come pick her up in New Hampshire today. I was a couple hours away. I was 2.5 hours away with my family. And I said, well, if I come pick you up at that time, then I'm going to miss my normal live stream. Good morning, Dan. And she said, well, do it anyway. And I listened to her. Typically, I will do it on the scheduled time, which is 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, but I had to make an exception because I hadn't seen her in over a week, and I just needed to do that for her. So I apologize. She came first today. But let me just read a couple comments, and then I want to get back to what I was saying about stress and struggle. Gloff says, busy morning, I'll pop on for a second. What are your thoughts on E. Michael Jones and the Logos, i.e. the order that governs the universe and history? Maybe I can get to that before the end, Gloff. I really want to explore this topic of stress and struggle for a minute. Okay, Grizz says, back to stress. Okay, so stress, let's say I'm writing an essay for school, or I've got some deadlines coming up for work. And let's say there's so many different parts to it that I'm creating this narrative in my mind saying, oh God, how am I going to get this done? This is way too much. I'm feeling stressed. Maybe my anxiety levels are going up, and I'm obsessing about the future and how I'm going to get these things done. And then maybe I get a little bit irritable, and then I just say, oh, I'm stressed, and that's what I was experiencing yesterday, because I was thinking about all these event horizons in my future and how I was going to make them work, how I was going to bring them to completion. So there is many different tasks and projects that are coming up in the next several weeks, and I was stressing about how I'm going to get that figured out. Now, what was funny about it is that none of that stressing helped whatsoever in the fulfillment of those tasks. It was just unnecessary mental problems. So for me, the difference between stress and struggle is I'm pushing myself. I'm coming up against physiological and psychological walls, but I'm just in the present moment. I'm just really doing it in the moment. Like, you can dig a hole and you can be struggling and sweating and working hard to dig that hole. You're not necessarily creating mental stress, right? Like I said, there might be physiological stress, which is a factor of your endocrine system and the release of certain hormones, etc. But that's not the same as creating stress in your mind, what we think of as psychological stress. So then I realized yesterday, I can struggle, but I don't have to be stressed. Like, what's the point of creating stress? Why do I do that to myself? It never helps me, productively speaking. And again, remember, I'm not talking about the difference between, I'm not talking about pushing my body. I'm not talking about taking on a heavy load. I'm talking about creating mental issues out of tasks and things that need to be done. So if I have a lot that needs to be done, what I realized is that I can struggle with those things on a present moment basis. But if I start obsessing about them and just overthinking it, I'm not really achieving anything. I'm not making any progress towards those goals. I'm just obsessing about it in my mind. So I can either take action and make steps towards the completion of those goals, or I can decide to do something else and then accept the consequences either way. But why do we create stress? Why do we create big storylines in our minds about things that aren't getting done or need to get done? And I realize that when I'm being productive, even if I'm taking on a heavy load, I'm not stressed. Like, when I'm really in the zone and even if it's been a 12-hour day of work, I'm not stressed. I might be tired. My body might be worn out. I might have a little bit of fatigue. My brain might feel a little foggy, but stress is typically something I do when I have idle time or when I'm in between tasks. I create stress. Stress to me is more of a result of inaction and procrastination and thinking than it is of anything else. And it's not always procrastination, because sometimes I get stressed when when I'm not procrastinating, I'm moving towards things. But I just thought it was interesting. I know this is kind of foggy. This was like an initial thought I had yesterday, so I haven't really fully fleshed it out. But I think there is a difference between stress and struggle. And what are your thoughts on that? That's kind of what I wanted to hear. Like, does this idea have any merit to it? How would you flesh it out further? What would it look like for you? Or what areas do you think I need to push my thinking further to make it more coherent? Because it doesn't feel fully coherent yet. It feels like it's an idea that's early on in its creation. It was just a brief epiphany I had yesterday, because what happened was I was let me think what exactly was happening. Oh, I was just enjoying a couple hours off, and then I realized my mind was obsessing about, like I said, all these event horizons, all these tasks and projects I have coming up, and most of them were things I couldn't even do anything about in the present moment. It's like a couple contracts that I got hired for, and that's in August and September, and driving back across the country to Colorado, and how am I going to make sure someone mows the lawn while I'm gone, and there's like 10 or 15 different things like that. But they were all just obsessive thoughts. And I started feeling really stressed. And when I get stressed, I get obsessive. Like, I keep thinking about it over and over again. Even if I'm not making any progress, I just chew on it and chew on it and chew on it. And then I was like, this is such bullshit that I'm doing this to myself. And so I just let it go, and I started meditating. I think I read my book for a little bit. I did other things that I had to do that day. And then I just had these natural thoughts arise of ways that the problems I was worried about could be solved, but they weren't forced thoughts. They weren't like, I wasn't proactively trying to solve the problems, just my brain was unconsciously working on them when I wasn't obsessing about it, and then solutions started to become clearer. And then I wondered, how often would that happen if I let that happen? How often would solutions kind of work on themselves if I didn't force the thoughts so hard? And that was kind of interesting. And then I felt less stressed by the end of that. And then I realized that, holy shit, I don't need to be doing this to myself. Anyways, thanks for listening to my babble there. I have no idea if that sounded, I have no idea if that sounds coherent or confusing or what. And I can't see if anyone's written anything in. Nope. Well, I'm gonna have to hop off in a minute. I know this was a short stream. It'll be longer on Friday, and I'll get back to my normal schedule. It'll usually always be on that normal schedule. Obviously, life happens, and every once in a while, I'll have to divert from that, like today. But for the most part, I'll stick to it. Any thoughts on stress and struggle before I hop off? Let's see. Whoa, I can put on filters while I'm live. Look at that. Ooh, I'm cool. I'm so lame. Who says they're cool? Oh, shit. Look at that. This is cool. What if I lived in a world that looked like this? Would you still be my friend? That's really what I want to know. Let's see this one. Whoa, I didn't know that YouTube could do this. Wow. We're going to go through a bunch of them. Silver. Cool. Anyways, I guess nobody has any thoughts on that. That's cool. No worries. Anyways, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will be back on Friday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Again, it's Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. That's 9:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and should be 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So thank you for joining. Write in the comments what your thoughts are on the difference between stress and struggle. Again, there is a difference between physiological stress and psychological stress, in my opinion, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. I don't know how clear the line is between those two things, physiological and psychological. Obviously, they're tightly linked together, but I do think that there is some difference between those two conceptions. So I know that that was probably not the most coherent thoughts that I've ever presented on this channel, but yeah, that's where I'm at right now. So it is what it is. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.